Hi everyone, Donna here. I am the owner here at Bookkeeping Made Simple, and today we're going to talk about disaster planning. Um, I think a lot of small businesses have kind of come to a shocking realization that they were not prepared. To be honest, this is an unprecedented shutdown of our entire economy. Um, Nothing like this has ever happened before. God willing, it will never happen again. But it does bring forward the understanding that we need to be prepared just in case. And that's really what disaster planning is all about. Now, Robert Baden-Powell, founder of the Scouting movement, talked quite a bit about being prepared. That is the Scouts' motto, be prepared. And when someone asked him what to be prepared for, he said, be prepared for any old thing. So that's my recommendation to you. So let's talk about a little bit about what being prepared means. According to the Small Business Administration, 25% of small businesses do not recover after a major disaster. And we are accustomed in the United States to having these major disasters be localized. So it's a hurricane that hit Florida that shut the state down, or it's flooding in Seattle or along the Ohio River Valley, or an earthquake in California. And strangely enough, we had an earthquake just days after the shutdown order came down here in Utah, which is unusual. We don't have a lot of earthquake activity here, which surprises me because it's geologically actually quite active, but we don't get a lot of earthquakes. If you live in Southern California, this may be, another day at the office for you, but in Utah, we don't get that very often. And I really think that if 25% of small businesses are unable to open after a major disaster, that number is itself a disaster. Small business is the backbone of our economy. This is what America runs on. As we're going through this unprecedented shutdown, have you determined how you will get your small business up and running again after the okay comes down for us to go back to work? It's coming. I think it's coming sooner than anticipated. I'm very optimistic that we will be able to go back to work, that the quarantines and stay-at-home orders will be lifted very soon. Because if I don't have a lot of optimism towards that, I'm not going to do well. I live on optimism. But eventually all of these orders have to be lifted. When that happens, how do you as a small business owner get your business up and running again? Do you know what your options are? Have you considered that? Of course, the time to prepare for this particular disaster was months ago, but there will be another one. That is as sure as death and taxes. There will be another one, and now is the time to prepare for the next one. Now is the time to really start thinking about what to do to prepare to get ready to get going again. If you're a brick and mortar business, do you have enough insurance on your building to cover it in the case of an earthquake, or earthquake, flood, fire, whatever could happen? A lot of people don't think about this. Is something that was really heavily in the news after the earthquake, which I kind of chuckled about because that was not the time to buy earthquake insurance. But do you have earthquake insurance? Do you have fire insurance, flood insurance? Earthquake and flood are typically separate riders. What in your property insurance, your real estate insurance, I guess, what is covered? What could you put on for a very small amount of money that would cover flood or earthquake or other disasters that are typically not covered in regular insurance? Computers and electronics are expensive. They can be very expensive to replace. especially if you're having to replace computers for a whole company. Do you have insurance on your personal property? What about your data? If I lose my hard drives, what happens? Do you have your data backed up to the cloud, or do you have your critical business information stored in the cloud? When you do that, that kind of takes the liability for it off of your shoulders, and it puts it to Microsoft or Google or Intuit or one of these big businesses that specialized in safeguarding this information. Do you have a plan for that? Since I work in finance and accounting, I have to have specific security for my files. So that's something that I am already looking at. If you're in healthcare, of course, everything has to be HIPAA compliant. So there's a lot of moving parts to that, but it's important to really think about, if I lose my local computers, do I have a way to work from home? Do I have a way to access this data? Do I have a way to restore this data to a local drive again? If you don't, then you might have a problem. That could be absolutely disastrous. And that might not be something that you've thought about. What if you need to temporarily let people go? That's something a lot of small business owners are really thinking about right now. Do you have a plan for that? Are you going to be able to tell your employees, go claim unemployment insurance for a couple of weeks? We'll be back and running again. I realize that it's very difficult. It's easy to stop a business. It is very difficult to get that momentum going again. It's like trying to push a boulder up a hill. It's easy to stop. It's not so easy to get that going. It's just, you have to have some momentum in business, and we've kind of lost a lot of that. But that's something to think about. Do you need to lay off your workers so that they can claim unemployment, so that you then have the funds to restart your business when the disaster is over? That's something to think about. I'm not advocating it. I'm saying I consider that a last resort, but it is something to have in your plans to consider. I grew up with a military reservist. My dad is an Army reservist. And so this one's kind of close to home. If you are in the military reserve or the National Guard, what happens if you are called up to duty? Do you have a plan for that? Do you have resources for that? These are just a few things that I'm just kind of thinking about just off of the top of my head. I looked at the SBA website, and all of their suggestions as far as a disaster plan had to do with flood, fire, tornado, those kind of earthquake, localized major disasters, basically. They do not address a nationwide shutdown because, again, this is absolutely unprecedented. But if you have a plan, I have discovered over the years, I've always been kind of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of a person. My boyfriend is definitely not a planner. He doesn't plan anything. But I always like to have something in the back of my mind. At least that, okay, if this happens, if A, then B. If this happens, then I know to do this. If he brings home dinner, then I know I don't have to worry about it. But if he doesn't and he's hungry, then I have dinner plans kind of on the schedule so that he doesn't have to worry about it. That's just kind of how my mind is. And even if you're not really a planner, if you have something in the back of your mind of, well, if worse comes to worse, we can do this, this, and this, then I think you're going to sleep better at night. And that's really going to be critical in the days to come. So if you have a plan of what to do when disaster strikes, whatever that disaster may be, and disaster will strike, then you can move forward with peace of mind. It does not have to be a super detailed plan. It can be very general. Okay, I've got insurance on my land. I've got insurance on my vehicle. I've got a little extra, I put a rider on my electronics so that if anything happens, the insurance company gets to take the risk on that. You kind of think all this stuff through, and then you set the plan, and you may need to write it all down and put it somewhere. But the nice thing about it is, once you've done this, you only have to look at it, you might have to look at it once a year to update it, but it doesn't have to be something that's weighing on your mind right now. The first step to planning is knowing where you're at. What are your numbers? Do you know what your revenue was before the shutdown? Do you know what your payroll numbers look like? Do you know how much you were paying on unemployment insurance? That's going to be kind of critical. Do you know, are you going to need loans or assistance to get you through this temporary shutdown? We have SBA lenders that we work with that would be more than happy to help and help you look at what your options are. I consider a loan kind of a last resort thing unless you are using it as a capital expenditure. But this is a time of last resort. This is a time when we do things that we ordinarily wouldn't do. So that might be something for you to look at. It's much easier to get the loans, however, if your books are already in order. And that is what we do. It's not, we don't charge a ton for this. We try to keep our prices very affordable so that in times like today, you can keep moving forward. Please feel free to reach out to us. Our website's always open at mysimplebookkeeping.com. We want to help you get ready to get back to business.